Good afternoon, fellow anti-novelists and curious onlookers and commentators. I appreciate all of you for joining me. In today's episode, first of all, you can probably hear my rooster outside. Full fact, I live on a fully working cattle ranch in northern central Missouri. So you may hear cows, you may hear chickens, you may hear roosters, who knows? Anything goes out here, so be warned. In any case, I'm getting back to breaking down the 4-act plot structure. So you may recall in previous episodes we went through acts 1 and 2 in those videos. There's Fizzle. Now we're going to go through act 3. So, welcome to Zettelkasten for Fiction, where imagination finds order. This is episode 10 on act 3 of the 4-act plot structure. So let's get into it. You may recall from my breakdown, Act 3, which is the one we're looking at today, exists within the middle part. That's where the milestones and the discoveries are. That's where your characters are making progress, they're making headway, they're making errors and learning from those errors. This is where all of the meaty action of the story takes place. Now, some of you may already know, this middle section is often called the muddle in the middle because authors tend to stall out in this area. They tend to lose their focus and go off on tangents. So part of what the Zettelkasten for Fiction book is going to help you do is it's going to help you nail down what needs to happen here so that you keep that engaging, progressing story moving forward and you keep your readers interested and satisfied. So let's look at it. In Act 3 on the short list, we've got the main character, the protagonist, becomes active. They fight the second battle, and this launches them into the third plot point, which takes them into Act 4, which is the final climax. So let's look at the cards. What we've got here, we've got the mirror moment is card 7113. Remember when I talked about James Scott Bell breakdown of the mirror moment where he talks about that main character needs to either face their fear or their fatal flaw or it destroys them. So if you want to read more specifically about confronting the mirror moment, I highly recommend James Scott Bell because he has delved very deeply into it. But we know the short list is, it's just that point at which your main character needs to make a decision about changing and confronting the reality of the story and the reality of who they've become. So my cheat sheet card for this coming into Act 3 says there are challenges and temptation. Your bad guys are closing in. Sometimes in the hero's journey, this is referred to as the dark night of the soul. It's where your hero feels like all is lost and they can't win. There's a critical clue or discovery. Note, it must not be a coincidence. Throwing in some key piece of saving information just as a coincidence that your character trips over is cheating the reader, and I guarantee your readers will be mad at you. Instead, do the hard work and go back to the earlier acts and scenes, fill in what those critical clues or discoveries could be, and leave the breadcrumbs that allow your character to legitimately discover that thing that's going to help them solve the mystery and win the day. That's what Kathleen Spracklin, my esteemed colleague, refers to as managing your reader's cognitive load. You don't want to load them down with a bunch of details and things and then voila, all of a sudden solve it for them. Again, that's cheating your reader. So put in the clues that allow your reader to discover the critical clue or thing. That's even a better bonus because if your reader discovers it first and then your character discovers it and then you can confirm for the reader that they were right, mega super bonus. Readers love being right long before the characters are. And then I've noted major assault. Sometimes this is where a major confrontation with the villain happens that reminds your readers that that villain is still lurking out there. The 7114 card is called Plan of Attack. This is after everything that's happened up to this point. Your main character comes up with their plan. How are they going to win the day? How are they going to defeat the conflict? How are they going to win over the villain? This is their plan. The cool thing about the plan is it is slated to fail. You want to show your main character struggling so that they can fight their way through that struggle in order to ultimately win and triumph over whatever their challenges are. Now, this doesn't have to be fist fighting it out with the bad guy. It can be something as simple as an internal struggle where maybe they're overcoming a deep lack of self-confidence could be something simple and emotional, but it can still be just as powerful. But the plan of attack has to be formulated and likely fail, which is what keeps your readers turning pages to see if that character can come back from the defeat and win. 7:15 is labeled the crucial role. This is the point at which maybe you introduce or you reintroduce a mentor, or something in the story develops a crucial position in helping your character figure things out and solve their problem or their challenge. This is just where you give that reader that life raft to hold on to so that they've got that important person, that important detail, the thing that helps drive them through the story. Because at this point, they know your character has been given what they need, and now they're truly rooting for them. The next card, 7:15, is labeled the second battle. Sometimes this is called the second pinch point. You want to decide how can you show the opposition or the antagonistic force. Again, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be a tornado flattening the town. It doesn't have to be bombs blowing up. It can be the terrible rabid dog. Everybody remembers Cujo, I hope. Finally is revealed for what they are, for being the monster that they are, and that mom protecting her child has to figure out once and for all, how am I going to defeat this dog, right? It can be very dramatic, but a simple thing as a rabid dog can certainly work. Think about those options and make decisions that serve your story and your characters. 70:16 is labeled direct conflict. This is where mom fights dog. This is where your main protagonist has to face and deal in direct conflict with whatever their obstacle, their opposition, their antagonist, or their villain is. 70:17 is just because we all are a little contrary as readers. Surprise failure. So this is where your protagonist made their plan, they figured out the plan, they got into that situation where it's a direct conflict, and oh no, they have failed, and it was a huge shock. This is just another twist that you can throw in to keep your readers on the edge of their seat while they root for that main character to figure out the problem. A potential 70:18 is labeled a shocking revelation. Maybe this is where a long-lost relative returns, or a mentor returns, or a critical detail is revealed. There's a million things that you can reveal at the end of this third act coming into the second plot point that can ratchet up the stakes and make it very interesting. Stakes are something that we'll discuss later, but it's the thing that your main character is in it for. It's the reason they're fighting so hard. So we'll put a pin in stakes and talk about those after we talk about Act 4, but suffice it to say, a shocking revelation is one of those things that can really drive your readers to root for the character and want to know what's going to happen. On my cheat card, I've listed an epiphany, so your character can all of a sudden come to that major realization that drives them into the end of the story. There could be a big change or something that shifts. It could either destabilize them, or maybe that big change offers them the stability they've been looking for. You as the author get to decide. Then I've got the conflict defeats the protagonist. So it doesn't have to be a bad guy. It could be a bad thing. Again, I turn to the esteemed Kathleen Spracklin, who, in a story that she has shared with us in our workshop group over in LiLLiPub.org, link in the description, her conflict is a boulder. It's blocking the road, and the ladies have to figure out what are they going to do about this thing that is blocking their path, that is quite terrifying on a narrow mountain pass. Conflicts can come from anywhere. You as the writer get to decide. And then finally, that brings us to the second plot point. The second plot point is what we call the doorway into the next act. This is the major outcome of everything that your character has fought its way through in Act 3 that then becomes the reason they must go through on into Act 4 to finish out the story. So, as you know, I have corresponding to each of these plot points a folder beginning with number 16, and it goes all the way through the end of Act 3, which lands on the 18 card, which is that shocking revelation card. So next, we will plow ahead into Act 4, and we will continue working our way through the 24 plot points. Now, keeping in mind, I drafted my 24 plot beats, I like to call them, because there's 8 major plot points that we're looking at in this structure, and those 8 major plot points are comprised of 24 plus items that I'm giving you as points that could be points in your story. These are derived from Derek Murphy's Plot Dot. Again, those are linked down in the description. I link all of the authors and coaches that I have turned to over the years who have inspired me in different ways in my own writing. So I used Murphy's 24 plot beats as a guidepost system to help get us through this entire 4-act structure. And I will continue to lean on and share some of my favorite writing coaches and authors as we progress on through. So that brings us to the end of the Act 3 breakdown. Tomorrow, I will go into Act 4, and we will wrap up getting you through the end of your story. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the nuances and the kinds of things that you can use to include in your story, and how that applies specifically to filling out and installing your Zettelkasten cards, because at the end of the day, this is about the Zettelkasten for fiction. So I want to get back to that as soon as we wrap up Act 4. So thank you again for joining me. I do very much appreciate your time. Thank you to all of my new subscribers. Welcome to Zettelkasten for Fiction. Please drop me a comment if you have any specific questions. I'm happy to answer them. And I will see you tomorrow for the Act 4 breakdown.